Benjamin Franklin, who was one of our founding fathers of these great United States, once wrote, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." Think about that for a second. Benjamin Franklin once wrote, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." However, when Neil Ferguson, the director of the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute for Disease and Emergency Analytics, reported that 2.2 million Americans might die from the coronavirus and 500,000 British people might die from the coronavirus, Americans were willing to give up their essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety.
4 weeks ago, we had the greatest economy in the history of the world, the greatest in the world, greatest in the history of the world. We had the most jobs ever in the history of the United States, almost 160 million jobs, right? And then one day, I get a call from Deborah, who's fantastic, and from Dr. Fauci. And she said, "We have a problem." I said, "What's the problem?" And they said, "We may have to close it up." I said, "Close what up?" They said, "Close up the country." I said, "What's that all about?"
And we all believe that their motives were pure. Although we've never heard the name Neil Ferguson previous to this show, or maybe in recent history, we all believe that the director of the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute for Disease and Emergency Analytics is pro-USA. We all believe that he has the best motives possible. He who we've never met before. And we all believe that Dr. Deborah Birx, who was appointed by President Obama, we all believe that she has our best interests in mind. Without having known anything about Neil Ferguson, who is the director of the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute for Disease and Emergency Analytics, and with knowing very little about Dr. Deborah Birx, who was appointed by President Obama. Then, after shutting down our entire economy and costing 10 million Americans to lose their jobs, Dr. Deborah Birx took to the microphone and said this from the White House podium.
I'm sure many of you saw the recent report out of the UK about them adjusting completely their needs. This is really quite important. If you remember, that was the report that said there would be 500,000 deaths in the UK and 2.2 million deaths in the United States. They've adjusted that number in the UK to 20,000. So 500,000 to 20,000.
So let me recap. The American economy was rocking and growing at an all-time record rate. And then we received a report from Neil Ferguson, the director of the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute for Disease and Emergency Analytics. And that report was parroted by Dr. Deborah Birx, who was appointed by President Obama. And then all of a sudden, everybody panicked. People panicked. People thought they would die. But now they have revised their initial predictions to a magnitude of 25 times less than their original predictions. Yes, they are saying that their original predictions were 25 times higher in terms of deaths than what they are currently predicting. So even though we know that, according to the Center for Disease Control and a report by CNN, we know that 80,000 people per year die from the common flu. We know that 80,000 people per year die from the common flu. We have decided to shut our entire country down for the first time in American history, based upon the findings of Neil Ferguson, the director of the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute for Disease and Emergency Analytics, and Dr. Deborah Birx, who was appointed by President Obama. Does that make sense?
We're looking into this in great detail to understand that adjustment.
Translation. Neil Ferguson, the director of the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute for Disease and Emergency Analytics, was off. His projections were wrong by 25 times. And then the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, took to the podium to announce this.
That was our public health strategy. Just close everything. All businesses, all workers, young people, old people, short people, tall people, every school, close everything. If you rethought that or had time to analyze that public health strategy, I don't know that you would say quarantine everyone. I don't even know that was the best public health policy. Young people then quarantined with older people was probably not the best public health strategy, because the younger people could have been exposing the older people to an infection.
However, Benjamin Franklin was not available for comment. But he did say, one of the founding fathers of these great United States, he said, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. So you're saying that Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers, that he was saying that it doesn't make any sense to give up our liberty for some temporary safety from a virus that Neil Ferguson incorrectly predicted would kill 2.2 million people. Are you trying to tell me that Benjamin Franklin would not have approved of shutting down our entire country based upon the predictions of the director of the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute for the Disease and Emergency Analytics? Well, what? And so, how would a communist country handle this coronavirus? Well, this is what China has now resorted to, because they are communists who are totally willing to give up their essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety, which is why they deserve neither liberty nor safety. Just listen to this news story from Reuters.
This little QR code is a lot more powerful than it looks. It helps collect data about your travel history, health status, and more. And China's using it to track citizens and stop those infected with the coronavirus.
Now, I want to make sure I'm getting this now. So you're saying in communist China, the people are willing to give up all their personal freedoms in order to potentially not die from the coronavirus. But yet Benjamin Franklin, who was one of our founding fathers, he said those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. So it's like the communists are doing 100% of the opposite of what Benjamin Franklin would be doing. That's how I read it, but that's just me. Well, I'd like to hear more about what them commies in China are doing, because I would like to learn how to do the exact opposite of what them commies are doing.
First, you fill out a questionnaire. It asks for details like your body temperature. It then generates a color code, and at checkpoints popping up across China, green means go.
It's my first time to come outside after the epidemic, but I already used the QR code several times, and I think it's good. It's proof of your identity. Our country is upgrading, and I think it's good to carry it out.
Well, now in China, correct me if I'm wrong, and like in the other communist countries, if you disagree with the government, they take you off and re-educate you. Perhaps they take you to the gulags if you're in the old Soviet Union, or they take you to the gulags, or maybe in China that you just disappear, you know. And so in the communism, it's like you're either in favor of what the government's doing or you die. And that doesn't seem like a move that I'm into. That's just me just talking right here. I'm just talking it out. You know, I'm not a big fan of dictatorships and the whole thing. And so I'm just going, this whole QR code thing sounds a little bit crazy, China.
The codes are being scanned everywhere, from restaurants to apartment blocks. Major cities and more than half of China's provinces have started to use the color codes, a way to make tracking down infected people easier for authorities. But Western diplomats and activists have criticized China's mass surveillance in the past and expressed concerns about what else this data could be used for.
Now, typically on the Thrive Time show, we don't talk a lot about Chinese human rights violations. But let me just read a few of the human rights violations as reported by Amnesty International. They write, the human rights situation continued to be marked by a systemic crackdown on dissent. The justice system remained plagued by unfair trials and torture, and other ill treatment in detention. China still classified information on its extensive use of the death penalty as a state secret. In March, folks, in March, this is all from 2019. In March of 2019, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights stated that her office sought to engage the Chinese government for full access to carry out an independent assessment of the continuing reports pointing to the wide patterns of enforced disappearances and arbitrary detentions. Enforced disappearances, folks. Think about that. What does that mean? Enforced disappearances. Now, if your mind can possibly handle it, check out this report from Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch. They're sharing with us how the good folks in China are dealing with other humans. This is what they write here. Authorities have carried out mass arbitrary detention, torture, and mistreatment of some in various detention facilities. Authorities have carried out mass arbitrary detention, torture, and mistreatment of some in various detention facilities, and increasingly imposed pervasive controls on daily life. They go on to write, human rights defenders continue to endure arbitrary detention, imprisonment, and enforced disappearance. Are you hearing this, folks? The government maintains tight control over the internet, mass media, and academia. They go on to write, also in July of 2019, a court sentenced a political cartoonist to 6.5 years in prison for subversion of state power and illegally crossing a national border. In 2015, Thai authorities forcibly repatriated a human rights activist to China even after the pair had been granted refugee status. Dong was tried alongside somebody else and was given a 3.5-year sentence for inciting subversion and illegal border crossing. The government restricts religious practices to 5 officially recognized religions held at officially approved locations. Authorities retain control over religious bodies, personnel appointments, publications, finances, and seminary applications. As China faces, again, this is all, folks, all of it is available. I'm citing it all on today's show notes. As China faces an unprecedented sex ratio imbalance and aging population because they made it illegal to pass on your inheritance to a woman, and because for years they had the one-child-only policy, which means that if you get pregnant with another child after your first child, this happens. Authorities promoted traditional roles for women, encouraging them to marry early and have children. The bride shortage in China has triggered trafficking of women from a number of neighboring countries, an abuse largely ignored by the Chinese government. Although the one-child policy has been relaxed to the two-child policy. By the way, what happens if you have more than 2 kids? Think about that for a second. Although the one-child policy, what happened when you had more than 1 kid? Has been relaxed to a two-child policy. What happens when you have more than 2 kids? Women and girls continue to face violations of their reproductive rights. Why are we listening to the Chinese about anything? Why do we listen to the Chinese? Why are they even relevant? Folks, the most evil people on the planet are the people in charge of the communist Chinese government. It makes 0 sense that we reference them at all, ever. Why would we possibly even consider the communist Chinese when making our policies or looking at our research about how to fight the coronavirus? What in the world is going on?
William Nee is a human rights advisor at Amnesty International.
We've seen the use of big data to do predictive policing and detain people really for no reason. So there's a concern that although this data is being perhaps collected for a legitimate purpose, that it could potentially eventually be misused in ways that we can't predict right now.
Are you kidding me? How could people possibly give up their freedom for a little safety? It's unbelievable. Of course the Chinese communists are going to use this against their people because that's what they do.
It is unclear whether the data is analyzed on a national level, as local authorities often use a variety of systems made by different companies, such as Alibaba's Alipay and Tencent's WeChat. But the number of reported cases has slowed in recent weeks.
And that makes a lot of sense for communists who believe that you should lock yourself into your home and allow the government to control your each and every movement in exchange for potential safety. That makes a lot of sense for communists to give up all of their liberty in exchange for potential safety. But what about for you and your family? Does that make sense?
China only reported 4 new locally transmitted cases on Sunday, which were all in Wuhan, where the virus outbreak originated.
Remember, Benjamin Franklin, one of our founding fathers, once warned us with the following statement: those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. If you'll take a moment to open up that controversial document known as the Constitution, the United States Constitution. Well, now, I've never actually read that thing. My teachers in the school system, in the public school system, all were a little bit on the progressive side. And when I say a little bit, I mean they're 100% on the socialist side. And so I've never read that thing. I'd love to hear it. And you were to read the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. You're going to, let me just read it to you. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Think about that, folks. We now no longer have the right to peaceably assemble. Well, we are following the Chinese method, where we're going to do what the communists did to eliminate the coronaviruses. I mean, even though the CDC reports that 99.2% of all of the deaths associated with the coronavirus in Italy were involving elderly people with a compromised immune system, we have chosen to take the Chinese approach. We are, doing what the communists were doing. Think about that, folks. We now no longer have the right to peaceably assemble. In fact, we're no longer allowed to, in the name of protecting you from the coronavirus. Despite the data having been shown that in Italy, 99.2% of all of those who have died from the coronavirus had a deeply compromised immune system. And you can find these helpful links by going to thrivetimeshow.com/coronavirus. So despite the fact that Italy now reports, according to the Center for Disease Control, that 99.2% of all of those who've died from the coronavirus had a deeply compromised immune system, despite the fact that we know that, despite the fact that we know that Neil Ferguson, who's the director of the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute for Disease and Emergency Analytics, was wrong when he once predicted that we would have 2.2 million American deaths, despite the fact that we know he was wrong by a factor of 25, despite the fact he's taken back his predictions, despite the fact that the original predictions weren't made by an American, despite the fact of knowing these things, we have decided to allow our country to be shut down in the name of having just a little temporary safety. But yet Benjamin Franklin once so prophetically wrote, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. I wonder what he meant by that statement. I wonder how the founding fathers would have reacted to this coronavirus. Now, are you trying to tell me that our founding fathers would have been opposed to locking down our country and choosing which businesses are essential or not? Now, are you trying to say that our founding fathers would not have violated our rights to peaceably assemble at a church or a house of worship? I wonder what caused our founding fathers to declare their independence from the British rule. Well, I thought because, the vast majority of Americans probably haven't read the Declaration of Independence recently, I thought I would take a moment today to read you the entirety of the Declaration of Independence. And as I read the words, vigorously take notes. And we're going to make this kind of a fun game because, remember, we declared our independence from the British. And so this is actually a letter or a declaration to King George. And so every time that you hear something that King George was doing to us, that our current leadership is now doing to us, you get a mega point. Okay, so every single time that you hear something that King George was doing to us, that our current leadership is doing to us, you earn a mega point. I love mega points. They're like those cool items you can find inside the winner's room of a Dave & Buster's or a Showbiz Pizza. You got the Laffy Taffy and all the stuffed animals. It's amazing, really, the value of a mega point. And you can't claim it until the afterlife, and so you can't waste your mega points. What a fine gift you're providing for your listeners, if I must say myself. Let's just see how many mega points you could earn on today's show. Are you ready? Okay, here we go. This is the Declaration of Independence as read to you by me. So this is the Declaration of Independence, the whole thing. So get yourself psychologically prepared. Well, let me just get a sheet of paper so I can take some notes here. And all right, Clay, I'm ready for you to read the Declaration of Independence. And it reads, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands that have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinion of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with inherent and certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, or to institute a new government, laying its foundations on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form, as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations begun at a distinguished period and pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism. Despotism means the exercise of absolute power, especially in a cruel and oppressive way. See China. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to expunge their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of unremitting, aka repeated, injuries and usurpations. Well, usurpations means to take someone's property or power by force, among which appears to solitary fact to contradict the uniform tenor of the rest, but all have in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world for the truth of which we pledge a faith yet unsullied by falsehood. All right, folks, now get ready to earn those mega points. He, a.k.a. King George, has refused his assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly and continually for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at the large for their exercise, the state remaining, in the meantime, exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither and raising the conditions of new appropriations of land. He has suffered the administration of justice totally to cease in some of these states, refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made our judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount of payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices by self-assumed power and sent hither swarms of new officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies and ships of war without the consent of legislators. He has affected to render the military independent and superior of the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our own constitutions. Well, as an ample example, recent here, Neil Ferguson, the director of the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute for Disease and Emergency Analytics, he sent us a report that said that approximately 2.2 million Americans could die. And so, as a result of the report, our country decided that we should violate Amendment Number 1, which states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of the grievances. This would be an example that is very recent, very current. In fact, it's happening right now. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our own constitutions, and acknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried by pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries, so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these states, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government, here withdrawing his governors and declaring us out of allegiance and protection, by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, dissolution, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty, unworthy of the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrection amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions of existence. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in intentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations. I'm going to need to take a mental break here in a minute. You use two big words at the same time. Magnanimity. Magnanimity is the fact or condition of being magnanimous, generosity. And usurpations. Usurpation means taking someone's power or property by force, locking the teacher outside of the classroom and taking charge of the math class is a form of usurpation. That, my friends, is all I have at this time. Which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They, too, have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. It's like with this whole Declaration of Independence, you keep reading words that people don't even know, right? It's like consanguinity, the fact of being descended from the same ancestor. Again, consanguinity means the fact of being descended from the same ancestor. That is all. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces us our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. How many mega points did you just earn? How many times did you find something that King George was doing to us that our current government leadership is doing to us? How many mega points did you just earn as we read the Declaration of Independence? Now, folks, I'm going to now read to you the United States Constitution, because I think it's been a long time since many of you have read the Constitution. If you've ever read the Constitution at all. I mean, perhaps you've never read the United States Constitution. So it might be helpful to give you a little bit of a backstory as to why we have a Constitution. And what is the United States Constitution? Well, the Constitution of the United States is essentially the supreme law of the United States of America. The Constitution originally was comprised of 7 articles, which laid out the national frame of our government, our way of governing this new country that we had built. Its first 3 articles embody the doctrine of the separation of powers, whereby the federal government is divided into these 3 different branches. You have the legislative branch, consisting of the bicameral Congress, the executive, which consists of the president, and then you have the judicial, which consists of the Supreme Court and the other federal courts. Articles 4, 5, and 6 share the concepts of federalism, describing the rights and responsibilities of state governments and the states in relationship to our federal government, and the shared process of the constitutional amendment. Now, Article 7 establishes the procedure subsequently used by the 13 states back in the day to ratify the Constitution. It is regarded as the oldest written and codified national constitution in force. Since the U.S. Constitution came to be in 1789, it has been amended 27 times, including one amendment that repealed a previous one in order to meet the needs of the nation that had profoundly changed since the 18th century. In general, folks, the first 10 amendments, known collectively as the Bill of Rights, offer specific protections of individual liberty and justice and place restrictions on the powers of government. The majority of the 17 later amendments expand individual civil right protections. Others address issues related to the federal authority to modify government processes and procedures. You see, amendments to the United States Constitution, unlike ones made to many constitutions worldwide, are appended to the document. All 4 original pages of the United States Constitution are written on parchment. And now, without any further ado, I shall read to you the United States Constitution. But again, I encourage you to try to earn some mega points here. Listen and take notes. And every time that you hear a portion of the Constitution that is currently being violated by our current leaders, I encourage you to circle it Write it down, because then you earn another mega point. And we all know that mega points are really what we want. I know there's a stimulus package available for people. I know some people are into currency. But I'm just saying, I'm going to give you a mega point every single time that you circle a portion of the United States Constitution that our leadership is currently violating. So again, listen to the Constitution. Take notes. Anytime you hear a portion of the Constitution that is being violated by our current leadership, circle it and write it down so you too can have a chance to earn a mega point. And to make this a little more fun, I'm going to have my evil twin brother, Claytron Menendez, read the U.S. Constitution to you, because
finally
he and I disagree on everything, and I think that he has a certain comedic flair that he brings to the mic.
Clay, that was probably the nicest introduction you've ever given me, my
right.
evil brother.
Sure.
Would like to now start to read the United States Constitution, if that's okay with you.
Sure, it's all right with me. But let's see if you just keep it clean. Keep it clean.
That's what I do.
Right.
That's what I'm known for. Now, if I could start, please.
Okay, you can start.
Okay, I'm ready now. The United States Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Do ordain and establish the Constitution for the United States of America. And now, folks, since it's just you and I in this booth, and Clay's not here, I'm going to keep you from going into a boredom-induced coma. And I'm going to now just read the amendments of the Constitution of the United States. That way, you can quickly see the violations of the Constitution that are going on right now in these great United States. So, Amendment number 1. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or the freedom of speech, or the press, or, someone should write this down, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble.
Well, now you're just quoting facts that it's not constitutional to shut people down and to prevent them from being able to peaceably assemble.
AKA to go outside and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Let me try again. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Amendment number 2. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Quick recap. You are supposed to be able to keep and bear weapons, and you should not be infringed upon if you want to do this. 2, you should be able to peaceably assemble, aka go to church, go outside, and to peaceably assemble. Clay, I don't want to read anymore. I'm too depressed. It seems like our leaders aren't following the Constitution at all. And I'm only on number 2. I haven't even gotten to 3 yet, or 4.
Hey, it's okay. It's okay. Many people are frustrated as well, but if you don't want to read anymore, I respect that. But what I'll do is I'll put a link on the show notes to the rest of the amendments of the United States Constitution, so our listeners can read the rest of it if they want. But thank you for coming out of your quarantine to read us a few of the amendments of the U.S. Constitution.
It's fine. I'm just going to go listen to the Communist Greatest Hits album I purchased online while being stuck in quarantine.
And now, without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom!